Hello, and welcome to the third installment of our mini-series, titled Equipping Deaf and Hard of Hearing Students with Magic. Today, I'll be interviewing with Kim Scott-Olson, who will be discussing a few different tools and strategies in the classroom for deaf and hard of hearing programs nationwide, who may not have a local deaf school to confer with. We'll be talking all about that today. Are you ready? Okay, I am thrilled to have you here, Kim Scott-Olson. Thank you for joining and chatting with me today.
Oh, thank you.
Now, I'm going to start by asking you a question. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
I'd like for you to tell me a little bit about yourself, your work, and your background. What drew you to working in the deaf world? And of course, there's a project you're working on, which we'll hold on for the time being, but please tell me more about yourself.
Thank you for having me here. It's very nice to be involved with your communications project as well. Very nice. So my name, as you said, is Kim. I've worked in a variety of different jobs. I have been a preschool teacher for deaf students. I am a family-centered early educator, a language and literacy development consultant, and an advocate for deaf children and their families. For IEP meetings, I provide support like language access. I'm a language access advocate. I am currently working on a grant. I wrote a grant, so I'm a grant writer. So yes, those are some of the different jobs I have.
Yes. And can you tell me how you were initially drawn to start working with deaf people? Where did that passion ignite for you?
My first experience with a deaf person was so impactful for me that I began to learn ASL right away because of it. It had to have been 40 years ago, and it was my first job. I was working at a summer day camp, and all the children were hearing. It was my first job, and I was so excited to learn how to teach. I was working there as a teacher's aide. I was motivated, and I couldn't wait to start learning. On my first day at the camp, I was working to get used to being with the children, getting them to be seated and things like that. We were ready for story time at one point, and I was thrilled to be able to learn from the teacher, to see how she was able to convey a story to a group of excited children. So the teacher sits down. I'm sitting next to her, watching her and the children are all seated, looking at the teacher all ready and excited for the story. The teacher started reading, and once she finished the page, she turned the book around to show the illustration. At that point, one boy stood up and just left. I was shocked. I couldn't figure out how he could just leave. I asked the teacher why, and she said, "Oh, he's deaf. He can't hear me anyway." She completely brushed it off. I was beside myself. I couldn't believe she said that. There was no support for him at all. He was all alone, and he just walked away while the rest of the children stayed to enjoy the story. The next day, I remained concerned. What did his deafness mean here? How can he communicate? I didn't know personally, but I did have a friend who worked with deaf students in Columbia, Maryland at the time. She lent me a book, The Joy of Signing. I figured I would go through it to see if I could find how to sign some words. The first thing I looked for was how to sign "What's wrong?" because the boy always seemed so down. I practiced and practiced. And when I went back to camp, I realized that even if I do sign this to him, I won't be able to understand his response. Not the best idea, was it? So I went home and practiced more to learn the signs for mom and dad, thinking he may use those two words. One day, I'm back at the camp and I was sitting at a table with papers for all the children to bring home. The deaf boy comes up to the table for a paper, which I give to him by signing, "Give to Mom." Just two signs, give and mom. The boy is almost startled. "Oh, you know how to sign?" I try to explain that I'm learning, but he and I became friends. He was 9 at the time, and I was 16 when I was the teacher's aide. Goodness, he was a sweetie. But we were attached at the hip that summer. We mentored and helped each other. He taught me signs, and the first one I learned from him was sweetheart.
Aw.
Very darling.
Wow, what a beautiful story. Funny enough, you mentioned something important. It doesn't matter if a person only knows a little ASL. I find myself as a deaf person connecting with them quickly, even if it's 2 or 3 signs. What you're mentioning here is the importance of communication. It's the key.
Oh yeah, that's the key.
A crucial key, yes.
And making that effort. Know what I mean? If a hearing person makes the effort to try to learn, that speaks volumes because that burden is always on the deaf person. The expectation to make those attempts. It's a lot of work.
That's exactly right. Okay, so now you mentioned that you have a project you wrote a grant for. Would you mind telling me more about that project? What's the purpose behind it? What's it for? What are you doing with that?
The purpose behind the project?
Your current project, yes.
Yes, the current project. The purpose is to advocate for deaf children in mainstream school settings. Because that boy I met all those years ago is far from the only one to be isolated, we're trying to prevent the trauma, the social, emotional trauma that comes from isolation. So I wrote the grant to support deaf children in mainstream schools. And we want to encourage teachers to learn more about deaf culture, how to communicate, what it means with an IEP, who's involved and who are the team players. And lastly, how to set up a classroom, what to do, difficult activities, ideas, contact other people in the deaf community, providing a comprehensive list of resources for teachers.
Okay, so your project is extremely important. You know, sometimes kids live quite far from the closest deaf school, so they may go to their local deaf and hard of hearing program, and often teachers have no idea what to do. How do they set up an enriching learning environment for deaf and hard of hearing students? So this is wonderful. I'm so happy you've started working on that. Speaking of which,
Yes, exactly.
that ties into the whole reason we're here right now. That's exactly what I want to talk about in this series. What can this look like? How can we support? What's the best way to teach them and all of that? So before we really dive in about deaf and hard of hearing classrooms, I'd like to talk about the ongoing political topic regarding deaf education and special education. Would you mind speaking more to special education policy in its current state, and what are the positives and drawbacks on its impact on deaf education?
I feel as though the current political climate, administrators and politicians, while they may be learning, they still have no idea about the difference between deaf ed and special ed. They are indeed different. For so many, many years, many deaf children were placed into special education, and this was the wrong place for them. There was confusion about what it meant, confusion about credentials, about the qualification of teachers, and everything involved with deaf education. Many people don't know that it involves learning another language, learning about the culture, not to mention language deprivation, language acquisition, etc. It's not just about the ear, know what I mean? I feel it's very important for politicians to learn the difference between special education and deaf education. So I'm trying to influence policy changes. As it stands right now, special education is this umbrella term and deaf education falls underneath it. But it should be a separate placement and that it would involve more funding for different professionals such as ASL specialists, a teacher of the deaf, deaf mentors, and so on. There are a variety of needs, and it costs money to provide that. Interpreters, too. It's different from special education. You need all of these different things, and that doesn't include the language difference either. That impact is felt by deaf children who have been placed in special ed incorrectly. They don't get the services they need. As a result, they struggle to catch up in their language development and acquisition. Where? When do they have that opportunity? Who teaches them language? Because it's not going to be a special ed teacher.
You're absolutely right. I agree. I once had a student here, an enrolled high school student who grew up in a special education classroom. There was no ASL, none whatsoever. So they arrived here with no language. Oh my. You're right. That was not the right placement for that student. So there's a lot of education and awareness to spread around. You're right. Yes, go ahead, Kim.
I tried to explain this in my current grant project. I explained at length that when it comes to teachers, who do you think works best with deaf children? Which professionals should be involved?
Good point. Agreed. Okay, so what goals do you hope to accomplish in the deaf and hard of hearing classroom and why? Let's dive into that.
In the deaf and hard of hearing classroom, I think it's important for all children to feel comfortable and welcome, to feel that they can communicate with each other and be able to develop confidence in their signing skills. Also, their ability to read and to believe in themselves. They should be able to see role models regularly and be able to access language, content, information. I want them to have everything possible together in a deaf and hard of hearing program. They need to be around each other. It's different if they're coming from a mainstream program where maybe a deaf child is isolated. So again, I mean within a deaf and hard of hearing program. I want them to appreciate each other. They can notice that they have that identity in common, and I want them to realize that they can. Too often, these children are told that they can't. Enough of that. Show each other that you can do anything you want to do. I want all my kids to be comfortable with learning. I want them motivated and excited about new information and about language.
I love that you mentioned feeling comfortable. That comfort is so important because they do know differently. Maybe they've struggled to communicate elsewhere with hearing people, so when they're in a signing environment, there's that instant feeling of safety, being around people they can relate to. They may think, okay, now I can finally learn without having to figure out what people are saying, So that's critical. And I also love that you mentioned role models. When students meet more deaf role models, it sparks this realization of just how much they can do.
Yes.
That is so powerful.
In my experience, I've seen many deaf children think they'll become hearing when they grow up because there are no other deaf grown-ups around them. We cannot stand for that. They must see other deaf adult role models to show what they're capable of. There is so much potential. They need to be witness to that.
Right, I agree. That reminds me of how much I love being a deaf person teaching work experience classes. I model how to navigate hearing environments when they're communicating with an employer, how to ask about an interview, and things like that. It's important for students to see that if their deaf teacher is communicating in this way, that means they can too.
Yes, exactly.
I'm curious to get your perspective on the topic of self-contained classrooms. What are the pros and cons with this?
Self-contained classrooms?
Self-contained classrooms, yes. Sometimes it's viewed in a negative light, others view it favorably. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there is positivity in having deaf children being together. This is a plus. Another positive would be access to communication in sign language. It's easy and there's no need for another person to interpret, write notes, or gesture. So there's easy, comfortable communication access, and I like that. There are a lot of positives there. As for the negatives, I think it depends on the program. At the school I used to work at, there was a deaf and hard of hearing program in an otherwise mainstream building. That meant we were a self-contained classroom. I had my students for 2 to 3 hours, 4 days a week. And I would expose them to language that entire time. That time was specifically designated for language development. For other children in kindergarten, they were mainstreamed with hearing students. So there were no more opportunities dedicated solely for language development. It becomes sink or swim. So that's the difference. What I do like about a self-contained classroom is the level of safety. The students feel safe.
Good point.
But I know some people say it's easy to become bored with the same setting day in and day out. There's a limited number of people there around and they want more experience with other people. I feel communication is key. It's crucial. One concern I have about self-contained classrooms is in a situation where a student arrives with very limited language. If the class as a whole already has a full language foundation in place, this new student may continue to fall back. Where is the time to dedicate more attention to their language development? That's where I start to get concerned. How do we help those new students catch up? Because they're just thrown into the water to paddle through, and they don't have enough language to understand what's happening. Their other classmates already know what's going on. They know the material. They know what's up. They have that language. How do we get this new student up to speed? I think some programs do have a separate sign language class for everyone, which is amazing. That ensures all students continue learning about deaf culture in addition to signing. That's good to have. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and your answer really emphasizes the distinction between deaf education and special education. Deaf education has the added layer of working on language.
Yes, right.
So you're talking about additional support, and this is the perfect example. Some view self-contained classrooms as separation in a way that isn't good. But in truth, it's important to have a safe space in order for us to communicate in our own language. With that being said, there's also a time and place to come together with other students. Like art class, for example, where language isn't necessarily at the forefront. You know what I mean? Communication can happen through action, like drawing or even playing. There isn't so much language. That's when you can bring students together. I also strongly believe in having options, too. Allowing the students to take the classes they want to. For example, off the top of my head, robotics class or something. If they're not learning that in their own classroom, they still can if they want to. My point is that it's nice to have options. So again, I agree that the negative stigma surrounding self-contained classrooms isn't always the truth. I agree with you there. So now I'm sure some teachers may be working to figure out solutions with deaf and hard of hearing students in their classrooms. Perhaps they want to know some strategies or tools they can use in terms of a physical classroom setup and what that should look like for deaf students. This is in addition to communication policies and potential teaching strategies. So it would be great for you to share some strategies they can use.
When it comes to specific strategies, I think the best answer to that kind of question would be from teachers of the deaf or those who are deaf themselves. They have ample experience to pull from, which makes it all the better from them to teach us. For me, when it comes to the setup of a classroom, horseshoe or circle seating arrangements are best. This is because you're able to see everyone's responses, who's communicating, and who's participating. There's more visual ease that way. As for other factors, overhead lighting is good, as well as noise reduction. There may be additional things to set up, such as an FM system, a cart system, and closed captions. For young children, it's great to have pictures with ASL signs in addition to printed English labels. Keep these in your classroom so that your students can learn from their environment. They'll be able to connect the English word to the sign, which is extremely helpful for young children, as it encourages reading too. And if you have a bell to notify students about changing class periods, you can also flash the lights or something to make it visually clear for deaf students. I'm trying to think of some other common things to note for setup. It's good to give a heads up to teachers on the best way to communicate with the students. Make sure you're not teaching while you're turned and writing on the board. Know what I mean? Make sure you're working to become more comfortable with eye contact. And make sure if you're using an interpreter, you're aware of the rules and roles involved with that. Their role is to interpret, not to babysit. They're not classroom aides either. Teachers should learn how to use interpreters, where to use them, and show their students how to use them as well. Everyone should learn how to use an interpreter.
Oh, yes.
And there are different ways to use an interpreter too. I like to use them for language planning. So imagine a student coming into school with limited language. It would be ideal to have an interpreter and a teacher of the deaf work with the student to keep fostering that language exposure. Maybe you're familiar with the term front-loading?
Can you spell that again? Front? Okay, yeah, please explain.
Front-loading refers to getting information before class, to be clear. So working with an interpreter to get new signs, information, and new content first before even arriving to class. That way, they're ready to use new signs the interpreter is using. There are so many different things I want teachers to think about.
I couldn't agree more. There are so many strategies that may seem commonplace for the two of us, but a lot of the time, many teachers out there don't tend to work with deaf and hard of hearing students. They may not realize just how much strategy is involved, and they need to do their research and ask around to find out what works and what helps. And it's funny when I go to professional development with hearing people, I always think to myself, you need to show pictures, you need to show more. Like, for example, if you're making something, please break it down. You need to show and not tell because I'm lost here. And it's not just me as a deaf person who benefits from that. It's not because there's an interpreting delay or whatever the case may be. The hearing people are lost too.
Yes, absolutely.
Everyone's asking everyone else what we're supposed to be doing. It made me realize that maybe we should spotlight our deaf ed strategies like pedagogy in order to really instruct other teachers for the benefit of not only deaf and hard of hearing students, but the hearing students too, because I think we're so accustomed to our approach that we take it for granted. We're very clear in our instruction in a way that I feel hearing students could benefit from as well.
They absolutely would. I agree wholeheartedly, especially because it takes time when it comes to communication and turn taking.
Yes, you're right.
Acknowledge the interpreter at the beginning of the class. It's important for them to be acknowledged in the beginning of the class to remind everyone that there are two languages happening simultaneously. This means it's important that when you want to talk, you must raise your hand. That way, the interpreter can find you once it's your turn. Wait until another person is finished speaking before you start. Just slow it down the tiniest bit. So remember to be thoughtful in what you're doing with communication. I want to see teachers learn how to model communication with deaf children. When the teacher models that, the students watch and learn and will follow suit. Know what I mean? I want teachers to understand their power as a role model for the other students as well.
I agree. It helps normalize people with disabilities, with that open interaction with other people. Another thing too is Zoom. Now there are captions, a chat box, screen sharing, and signing, which can be a lot all at once. Sometimes we need to slow it down. We also need to strategize for the Zoom classroom, the virtual classroom, so to say.
Yes.
It's a new world now, for sure.
What helps on Zoom as well, let's say you're sharing a worksheet on Zoom. Many times people will pull it up as instruction is happening. Remind yourself to slow down and wait. You want them to read it first, and they can't do that and watch the interpreter at the same time. Wait for them to pull up the content and give them time to read it, please.
Exactly. Another perfect strategy. Another strategy, too, is that sometimes Zoom will ask all participants to turn off their screens so that we can see the person signing on a bigger screen. There are so many little things.
I learned so much about this during COVID. It certainly taught me a lot.
Oh, yes. Okay, now I'd like to wrap up with a fun question. Are you ready?
Oh, you want a fun one?
Of course. Because the whole theme of this mini-series is about magic. So, Kim, if you could dream of a deaf and hard of hearing program that was magical, what would that look like?
Ooh, I think that I want to see all children, especially in places where they have deaf and hard of hearing programs in mainstream schools. I want to see all children learning to sign, all the staff, all the teachers learning ASL.
I love it.
I want them to understand and become bilingual. It wouldn't hurt them. In fact, it would help support all of the children with their literacy. They can all learn to read better. It would help so many children with delayed speech. And of course, they can speak too. The real point here is to give all deaf children more interaction opportunities. More opportunities with people who want to learn to sign or communicate. That's my dream, to have everyone learn to sign.
That's beautiful. That reminds me of one of my favorite topics that I bring up in my presentation. As it goes, when we deaf people are in an environment where everybody is signing, our disability disappears. That's magic right there.
Oh, yes. Amen.
Great.
It is so much work, you know? So much extra work for the deaf child. Daily barriers and frustrations. Enough is enough. I want to see all communication barriers removed completely with signing. Communicate with me, please.
That's where we start to develop that relationship.
Yes.
Communication makes relationships happen, right?
Yes. I've had many deaf people tell me that plenty of hearing people say they will learn ASL someday, but they never do. Through the years, they might pick up a few sentences. How are you? Nice to see you. Bye. See you later. And that's all. Just surface level sentences, which isn't enough to nurture a relationship. That's the change I'd like to see. Let's get rid of this trauma in favor of easy, fun socialization. Socialization should be fun. It should be enjoyable.
Agreed.
We have too many kids scared to go to school. Enough already. Every day shouldn't be a battle. Let's change that.
When I go to the grocery store and the cashier signs "thank you" or "have a nice day," that means so much. Those few signs spark an instant connection right then and there. You don't always need to learn an entire language. Learning a few things can make a world of difference.
Basic signs. We need to see that from police, lawyers, hospitals. Don't get me started. But it is exciting, and I want to tell people when they learn, thank you. Thank you for signing. Thank you so much for signing. To give that positive reinforcement to learn signs. It's my hope that we see more interpreters, more teachers of the deaf. We need so much more. We don't have enough right now.
Nope, you're right. We need more. Kim, thank you so much for your time. It was an honor to have you here.
Likewise, the honor was mine to chat with you. Thank you for thinking of me. And I hope I answered all your questions.
You did, beautifully. Well, I hope you enjoyed joining me for this chat with Kim Scott-Olson. We learned about how to create a classroom with more magic and accessibility for deaf and hard of hearing students. Goodbye.